All right. Well, let's see. A few seconds to go, and then. All right, everybody. Hey, guess what? It is Saturday, January 19th, 2019. It is currently 5:02 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. A little bit late, but that's because Ed's still trying to figure out this newfangled thing called the telephone system. So, you're listening to education. No disclaimers today, isn't it? Disclaimers with
Yep,
Ed
yep,
Johnston.
disclaimers.
So, Ed's a little bit under the weather due to lack of sleep and health issues. So, Ed, why don't you take it away, and we'll go as long as you feel up to it, and then we'll close the show.
No problem. Anyhow, I want to thank everybody for joining us tonight. Tonight, I got a couple of things I want to get into. I got to pull the other one up here in a minute. But I want to thank everybody for joining. The whole point about all this is definitely making sure that we've got people that are truly educated with the knowledge compared to what people were educated or taught to believe. That's the whole point about this stuff, is because we and others that are involved in going and properly educating ourselves. And that's the whole point. So, I mean, our school systems have failed, 100%, you and I. Our elected and public employees have failed, you and I, 100%. So you got to remember, elected and public employees have to create human trafficking for personal financial gain. Raping children, robbing, that's called job security. So when people sit there and go, oh, well, we need to stop these criminal activities, and, you know, what about the children who are being raped? Well, look at your system in your own community. Why is the sheriff and the police department supporting and covering up rape charges? Think about it, folks. This is reality. This ain't no fantasy. See, and they do this on a regular basis. This is nothing new, because they do this for job security. That's like ministers in churches. They do it for job security. To a pastor, well, today the pastors are supposed to inform law enforcement, what they call law enforcement. But remember, law enforcement is the United States Marshals, the only one that has authority. The sheriff's department really don't have authority, and we've got that up there. Proven that the sheriff does not have authority to be outside of the courthouse. And that's the point. And if they're a sheriff deputy, they have no rights at all. They can't even be employed, technically, because deputies are not supposed to be employable. They're supposed to be people in the community that are called upon to defend their community with the Constitution and sheriff. But you have to make sure that the sheriff took an oath to the Constitution, not the corporation. And that's the one thing that we're getting into, where people are starting to comprehend that these men and women is knowing what the appropriate oath is. And that's what I've been dealing with people on the Admiralty 1 courts, the Admiralty 1 courts, called tribunal courts, and then the courts 3, you know, the Article 3 courts. And the Article 3 courts, that's where people get in trouble, you know, because they don't know how to file this stuff. And that is the point, is putting the stuff together. We've got it down to a point where, all right, here's the way the administrative rules work. We're getting up to federal crime due prosecution, you know, because it has to be a crime. Hearsay is not a crime. A district attorney, a judge, a cop cannot write an affidavit for an injured party. If they do, it's a criminal activity. The only way that can be written is due to family members, somebody personally connected with the case of the injured man or woman. You know, and that's the whole beauty about this. You know, the Constitution was designed to protect we the people. And I don't like using we the people, because we the people is another problem circumstances when you do the history like I've been doing, and you find out how these words were confused and deliberately written to confuse us in the name of what they call the terrorist act called democracy. And it really disturbs me when to save their terrorism, so that way it still gives them the right to rape children. It gives them the right to harm other individuals, men and women. An individual doesn't exist; it's like a person too. We'll have that up on the website because I got that in another court case, and with other paperwork, and that's like a person. I was talking to somebody even today, and then we got a conversation about the word person. Well, person is an inanimate object; does not exist. Either you're a living man or a living woman, and otherwise, if you're not living, you don't exist. It's in the story. And see, that's the one thing that we want to make sure that people comprehend: what's lawful bloodline native versus legal citizenship. Okay, and remember, legal citizenship. It's a ship. So it's like when people, I'm still been in and out of the hospital the last few months, and I'm back in again. And it's like, oh, we need to know your birth date. And it's like, I'm not birthed. I'm not a ship. If you want a birth, then a ship, go somewhere else. But I'm not a ship. And so I'm not going to play that game where, I've had people say, well, don't worry about it. This is the way it is. And I do worry about it. Because the minute that you go along with these people who say don't worry about it, you're consenting. You're giving over your rights. And that's the one thing that people got to get the point to realize. When you do that, you lose. You never, ever give up your rights. It's like everybody, well, we want you to sign this paperwork. I'm under duress. And not only that, I think it's Title 42. 408 says if anybody uses your Social Security number, or even if you use it to give it out, it's a federal crime. And so even though that these criminal activities are overlooked, like Nancy Pelosi and the Democratic Party, because, see, they need your birth certificate to make a living to rape, rob, and pillage. It's like Nancy Pelosi's husband getting a contract for the train system from L.A. to San Francisco. And then people are saying, well, that's not a conflict of interest. It sure the hell is. She's sleeping with the guy and he's sleeping with the woman. That he got him a $700 million contract. To me, that's a conflict of interest. And I think it's even written that way if you're a public employee, public servant, or even a public contractor, and you're in something like that, that's a criminal activity. And I know I have some writings up on the website on it, and I can't quote it to you right now where to find it. But, this is the one beauty that it is worth taking the surf on new.org and trackers on the website and look some of this stuff up. I just sent some more information up. I will have the structure of human trafficking, totally one side of it done tonight, and then I'll have the other side because, I got 15 years with the system trying to take me out with their own words of talk shows, videos. These are the mayor, the city council, the district attorney, own words. So that's the whole point. When you're putting together your case, if you don't use the corpus delicti 3771, Title 18, and claiming that you are the injured man or woman, that's why they throw your case out of court. Because you're using it as an inanimate object. You're not saying I'm a living man or woman. But that goes to an Article 3 court. And so people go, well, how do you find an Article 3 court? There's none that exists. And I've been on the internet with people, and I've posted the Article 3 court, and I don't know if we have it up from the Article 3 versus the tribunal court. But an Article 3 court, you have to file on. Don't ever use capital letters, ever. Use a capital C and then all little letters, and the state of all little letters. So, and also too, you got to learn when you write the word state, how you put state and what this deal is, because like Oregon State, is what you want to use instead of the state of Oregon. You don't want to use the corporation name. You don't want to use the corporation design. So you have to come out with the structure that says it's not a corporation. So, and then when you file it in Washington, D.C., or the national district courts, you have to file to get the judge's information to find out is his oath to the Constitution or to the administrative tribunal court. You have to file on the clerk to find out what their oath is. Okay, you have to file on everybody involved, including the sheriff deputy, the board members, especially the grand jury. You want to file that the grand jury there's no elected or public employees on a grand jury or contractors to the government. And it has to be, and if you regularly read what a grand jury is, it's 6 members of the peer of the injured party, and it's 6 members of the peer of the criminal party. So it's divided and separated so there can't be public employees on it. And 6-man jury is maritime tribunal courts. So when you're in those type of courts, you're already set up to be screwed. You're very lucky when you win. Very lucky. But they do this for the purpose for income, because you got to keep the machine going. And that's the whole point. Keep the machine going. Keep the machine pumping. And that's called the Elected and Public Employees Union. And so it is comprehending what, why, and how. And it does make a big difference of what, why, and how. And so without us making the big difference, we're screwing ourselves and we're screwing the children. So the IRS is definitely not a government agency. It is an agency of the IMF. The IMF is an agency of the United Nations. Now, the United Nations is owned by the British government and Nazi Germany. They are not the world's friends. They are the British government, Nazi Germany, and they want to control the world. Russia, United States, Uganda, any other country, any other structure. And they don't care about your freedom. It's like right now they're getting ready to try to put a ban on going after guns. And I read an article today that popped up that the new state attorney general that Trump hired wants to go after and put a bill in that if you have guns, you go to prison. And that's the United Nations bill. So what the hell is really going on here? So when it comes down to this, people, you got to get off your ass, file your paperwork, claim that you're a lawful bloodline native or legal citizen, and get your stuff filed. Because if this stuff ain't filed, for the correctness of what has to be done, there is no future. And it's our responsibility to file the instruments. And people say, well, that doesn't matter. It sure to hell does, because you have to prove who's lawful and legal in this country. And that is the biggest point, And also, too, since 1921, there has not been a treasury. The United States Treasury is now an IMF. So, and the Attorney General, is, not employed, but is part of an agency of Interpol, which is a quarter of Alliance France. And that's tied into the Interpol of, what is that called? Britain's Interpol. So, these are the things that when you start reading this stuff, stepping out of the movie, watching the production, how real life is, and the United States Incorporation, the United States period, does not have any employees. So that means the United States of 48 states has no employees, no gardeners, there is no structure for cleaning up the shit in the street or anything. There's no employees. It's called we the people. And so that is the point of getting off people's ass when you see trash in the street and stuff. Pick it up. Quit whining and say, well, I don't have to do this. Either it's your country, so clean it up. Or else if you don't like our country and being responsible, get the hell out. I've argued with that with some immigrants. That's why I'm glad that, the 14th Amendment has been proven was never passed and ratified. The 14th, 15th, and everything beyond there has never been passed and ratified. But it can only be done by administrative rules under tribunal court. So like I said, the United States has no employees. The employees are we the people. We have to do that. Social Security is a number issued by the United Nations through the IMF. Well, yeah, that came after Clinton, which I was writing this morning, and I lost 3 hours of work putting this thing together because where I'm at, it flashed and I lost, all my work. So now I got to remember what the hell I was putting together and get that out because I could prove this stuff. You know, like I said, we'll get the human trafficking up. And there is no jurisdiction courts in America, and there hasn't been a court basically since 1789. That's when they put in, what was that? The Immigration Act. Because they had to put something in to help protect the future, and they knew that. And judges do not enforce statute and code. Executive officers do. Administrators do. So when you walk in that courtroom and you think that's a judge in front of you, that's an administrator of your trust, your birth certificate registration. So people say, well, that doesn't matter. It sure does. Because your birth certificate is a registration to the corporation. So either the corporation owns you or who does. If you don't file to own your child or own yourself, the corporation owns you. You get a driver's license. You pay state and federal income tax. You pay property taxes. You give up your rights. You're saying, I'm a slave. I don't have rights, so I have to pay you or else you're going to murder me. And that's a fact. Trust me. I've been living that right now for several years and dealing with that with the court systems. You know, been in and out where they tried to kill me in jail, and that's a fact. And I got videos up there with the talk shows with the district attorney and other people that have done this. So there has been, according to the GATT, you must have a Social Security number. That's a lie. See, this is the one thing that really pisses me off when people put some of this stuff out in the general public, you know, and the people read this stuff because they don't sit there and do the research. Somebody says what I just said to you, oh, that must be true. You don't need a Social Security number in the United States if you are a lawful bloodline native. You have to have one if you're an immigrant for tracking, and you have to have one mandatorily if you're a public servant. See, when you become a public servant, you give up your constitutional rights 100% because you're getting de facto dollars and being paid for. And so realizing what that is and what the IMF is with the Treasury, and that's how it works. And that's what I was working on putting together this morning, dealing with the, I'm having a brain fart, the article, the force structure, dealing with how they get the funding for the feds, because the feds fund the states so they can steal your children, and that was passed by William Jefferson Clinton. And I'm trying to remember what it's not Title IV. Let me see if I'll try to pull it up here in a minute. But I want to get people to comprehend that when you do this stuff, this is how it works. And see, we have a one world government, but we don't have a one world government. See, people write this shit in because they do that. Now, the one world government is called the British government, and that's called the Roman Catholic Church. That's all your religions, because your religions have to register with the city, county, and state, and that is under the Roman Catholic Church. So you got to realize who's running your government. And that goes back when they had the Civil War. So the churches put a treaty in, and even though it was reconsidered or revamped in 1891, but see, you got to realize that some of these people have gone through this for generations of their own families with the Senate and the House and all that when they created it. That's like the 17th Amendment. You have no rights to vote unless you're a real landowner. The voting today is fraud. You know, immigrants vote. That's a federal crime. That's a jail sentence, and it actually says it. You know, so if you're not a landowner, and that's the original part, I'm working to get that pulled up. And once I get that pulled up again and find what the law says, because landowners are the only one that have a right to vote. End of story. But voting on that does not go for property taxes. You cannot vote on school taxes. You cannot put any tax on the vote. You know, and the only thing that you could vote on when that was going on was, the Senate and the House, but the people couldn't vote on that. Only people in the structure, because remember, when they converted into a corporation, it's not a real government. It's a corporation government that has nothing to do with we the people. And it only can work in the 10 square miles of Washington, D.C. It's not supposed to be in the 48 states. And remember, Puerto Rico, Alaska, and Hawaii is corporation members. They are not part of we the people at all. We know that the United Nations is one government. And that's the one thing that we've got to realize what they're doing, how to own yourself, how to claim yourself. And it's disgusting because the United States joined in 1945 to the United States, and that's when, the name change was done in 1945 to the United Nations. And remember, that goes back to the foundation, what the Democratic Party and the terrorists of religion was doing, called the League of Nations. And, if you haven't got that, we'll get that put up on the website because, we're still trying to get stuff done. But, we've got people that have been working on this beside myself, and they have, families and other issues. And I'm just been bouncing in and out of the hospital for the last several months. Basically, almost a year now, last July. So, and remember, the Constitution is the law of the 48 states. And the treaties are the law of the land. Okay, that's the one thing people got to realize. Those treaties are the law. The Constitution backs it up. And remember, the Bible gives you no rights. The Constitution gives you rights. The Bible gives you the right to believe in what you want to believe, so long as you don't cause harm to another living man or woman or property damages. And that's the one thing that we deal with today. And number one, dealing with the planet has been free. The planet now is a slave of what you would call the colonies or colonization. Because now everybody's got to get a permit. They want you to buy a permit, permission slip. Like the state of Oregon is trying to pass a carbon tax. So they want to charge you to breathe life, air. And it shows me the mentality of how stupid and mentally retarded, and I'm going to use that word, mentally retarded, people are. Because when they're not paying attention to what's going on, they're proving they're mentally retarded. They're incapable of handling their own actions. And they try to keep saying that the Social Security is not an insurance card. And it sure to hell is, because even the military, with the Social Security number, they put a $30 million bond on each soldier. So if they die, the corporation gets $30 million under the so-called not insurance contract that they some of these people claim out there. And your Social Security check comes from the IMF. And technically, Social Security is a private corporation. It had nothing to do with the United Nations. The only reason why I got to the United Nations is William Jefferson Clinton. And that's the one thing that people have got to wake up to, what these Democrats have done, destroying your families, destroying your home. Because you got to remember, these men and women don't give a damn. Because the only way they can have a life and an income is raping children, robbing people. That's it. That's the way it really works, folks. And that's the thing that people have got to get to the point of comprehending what the corporation is truly doing to you and I. And that's where I wanted to get into, too. Let's talk about the financial aid that the states are given, with Title IV funding. This is the saddest part, that these men and women are going through this, dealing with financial aid and, with your children that, they want to steal it for financial gain. And that's a fact. And that's what they're doing right now to your homes, your children. They're taking your stuff for personal and financial gain. And when you think that these people care for you, it just shows me how morbid people are, because they're not paying attention and protecting their bloodline. They're proving they don't give a damn about their bloodline, and that's exactly what the circumstances mean. You're telling the general public you don't care. And that's the one thing that people have got to start standing up to this, because with Trump right now is making a change. Okay, you're going to see some new changes coming up that, I don't want to get into, but there's going to be some new changes that are going to pop up that's going to really rock people's worlds coming up here. And people have got to pay attention to what's coming up, because we have to start protecting the soil. We have to protecting our rights. And it's like what really gets me disturbed is, we've got these new things of fracking, and everybody's panicking about some of the things that Trump is doing with the oil fields and stuff. But people, you've got to get your head out of your butt on that, because remember, he's caught in the middle of a lot of things too. So he has to balance out the circumstances of life that he's living. And so you have to have compassion. It's not about you. It's about all of us. So this is the biggest part about life, how to protect one another. And so that's the whole point. And we already know who owns the world, technically, or the United Nations, and that is called the Roman Catholic Church, your Pope, the devil. I mean, that's just the way it is. It's under corporation administrative rules. So, and it's already verified, and you could go in and you look and read 28USC3003. You'll be amazed when you start reading these things and how it comes out. You become really amazed at the knowledge that you become, especially when you're educating your children with this, and when you sit down and walk this through with your children, because it works for both of you. You both end up getting educated, you and your children, and not only that, it becomes a conversation piece. So you discuss these things. And that's the whole point, sitting down with your children and educating them, because the schools have failed. They're 100% complete failure. They don't care about your children. So once people stop it and start realizing this and protecting their children, protecting their bloodline, because that is the future. Everybody's going, oh, well, we need immigrants. Well, because our children won't do the work. Well, they're taught not to do the work. See, that is a real fact. They are taught not to do the work. Oh, we got to pamper and spoil our kids. We're not supposed to put our kids out to do real labor. See, that is the problem. It's the parents doing this to the children. So, it's the way people are lazy. So, and that's the one thing. People are too damn lazy in this country. They don't know what it's like to go out and get their meat and do all this stuff. And see, that's the point that has to be done. Knowing how to survive correctly. Because it is sad that 60% of our food resources today, 60% on the grocery store is not real food. And a lot of it's sawdust, plastic overlays, and a lot of other stuff. So it is disgusting what's in our food resources. So it's looking at what we're living on, looking at what we're eating, what we're feeding the children. And so it is a big deal of what you're feeding your children. And so, like I said, I will have an issue out here dealing with human trafficking with my circumstances. There's going to be a lot of information that's going to be extremely overwhelming for the average man or woman. And believe me, I'm not making it up, because it's going to be very overwhelming. But that's the point, that proving human trafficking and proving the point of how they make the living by raping children. And one of the biggest cases in the state of Oregon that I personally was involved was the Will and Pamela Gaston case. And that's when the jury granted Will and Pamela Gaston $500 million for the pornographic movie that the state DHS employees made of a 5-year-old child. So don't tell me the state employees and the cops and the sheriff's department and all these people are not involved. They are. They make a living off of pain and suffering. So it's up to we, the people, we, the lawful bloodline natives, to stand up and stop this stuff. So once we're stopping this stuff, then we can see changes. Then we can see that the children have protection. It's not going along like, well, everybody else is doing it, so why not me? That's the point that we don't want to do, and that's the point we want to see this stop, so the children are not going through it. So we can produce a lot of satisfaction things coming down the road. We can produce, make sure that we're growing food, planting food, and that's the main point. And the other point, too, is that, when you pay your state and federal income tax, or if you're still in the system, even though that you might have to be because you're an immigrant, or if you're a public employee, a registered church member, okay? But if you're paying the taxes, file your 1099 form on your state and federal taxes. File your 1099 form. Oh, if you pay a traffic ticket, you know, even if you pay a quarter for a copy at the corporation, the city, file a 1099. Because, see, if they're not showing that income to the IRS will close that corporation down. They have to by administrative rules. See, that's what I'm saying. Well, you have to read this stuff of what they're doing, and by reading this stuff, this is how we're protecting the bloodline. This is the only way we can do this. There is no other option. And Trump is giving us this option, even though that we got a lot of people out there slamming Trump. You know, the Democrats are screaming and yelling because they're going, well, you're going to end our democracy. Well, democracy is rape, rob, and pillage. Do the research. We've got it up there. I put the administrative rules up that even says how that works that way. You know, that's called a democracy. In a republic form of government, that stuff don't fly. You have rights, not privileges. And that's the point that people, once people start putting that together and they start standing up for their children, first time start standing up for the children and really mean that they love their children by protecting them, then we're going to see major, major changes. But that's the only way that this is going to happen, is by we, you know, by lawful bloodline natives, as well as legal immigrants that are catching on. And we do got legal immigrants. I've talked to several of them here lately. One is Lorenzo. The guy has got his shit together. The guy is speaking out better than most Native Americans around. He gets it. He's protecting his rights. You know, he's getting about the system, you know, and that's where I was talking to some other immigrants before I ended up here back in the hospital. But I was talking to them dealing with, all right, so you pay this, you pay that for your protection. Okay, because when you pay the state and federal income tax as an immigrant, you're paying the state to protect your administrative rules. So they cannot rob, and pillage you. Okay, they actually have to prove that you are a criminal. They have to prove you're not the injured party. And if you're the injured party, now they have to protect you. And how and reason why? You paid them for that protection. So basically, it's like paying the mafia in a sense of what it really comes down to. It's no different, but you're doing it so it has a legal structure to protect you. And you got to realize the word legal. Legal is a religious point of view of taxpayers. So, and then it's just stepping out of the movie and watching the production, how it works compared to like we're indoctrinized to think. You know, like I said, I always talk about, you know, people need to watch a movie called Interstate 60. Explains your court systems. I do talk about, you know, the Lighthouse Law Club, because they have a lot of good stuff. The one gentleman that I recommend all the time, you know, now brain fart. Rob. Oh God, I'm having a brain fart. Rob Ryder. Rob Ryder puts out a lot of good information, especially if you're living in Georgia. He gets into this stuff better than most. You know, he puts a structure in how to own yourself. He does it well. So these are things that when you got a man out there that's actually doing this stuff really well, read it, participate in it, protect yourself. And that's what it's really all about, you protecting yourself. I mean, look at it. We got the 5G towers going up. And everybody's saying, well, that doesn't affect us. Yes, it does. It's your health. You know? I mean, there's a lot of structure that we have where we're going through certain areas. It affects your body, your health. So, I mean, it is paying attention to your body, your circumstances of what politics are about. And you don't have to get all wrapped up and get crazy in it, but if you don't do it, you lose out. So, like the United States Commercial Code, that is the law of merchants. That's admiralty. That's tribunal. And I'm going to be sending this structure to the web host, and it's called the sovereign is somebody not subject to statutes. And a person is somebody who voluntarily submits him or herself to the state corporation. So a person is an inanimate object. So I will have all this put together here. We'll get this up on a website, and it'll be probably about a page and a half, 2 pages. And then I've got the other stuff that we have up there, and it's like we're dealing with the Article 3 courts. We've got it up there. If you're a lawful bloodline native, the courts are free. So it's reading, it's studying. So we've got the outlets up there that, hey, here's how I don't have to pay the courts. Here's how the structure is with the IRS and that stuff. How do you plan on protecting your family? You know, and it's getting your soil out of the structure called taxes and land. Because taxes, you know, it's like everybody says, well, you have a right to vote. Well, if you go back when voting was done before they passed the Voting Act, you know, which they lie. They say women never had a right to vote. They lie to you. Because a woman who owned property back in the 1800s when they started doing voting after the Civil War, prior to that, voting really never existed after the Civil War did, but you had to be a landowner. And if a woman was a landowner, she had a right to vote. So when they lie to you and say the women never had a right to vote, it's bullshit. You know, it's like dealing with people who go, well, the woman shouldn't have an abortion. Well, I tell those men and women who speak on a religious point of view, you don't have a right to life. You know, because you're saying the woman doesn't have a constitutional right to her body, so you don't have a constitutional right to your religion. You know, it's just this simple, that simple. You know, I mean, that's the one point. Instead of us arguing about, like, abortion, who cares? The woman has to live with it. Why are we arguing about somebody else's problem, somebody else's issue, instead of taking care of the structure that protects our Constitution? How come we're not raising food, collecting rainwater, taking care of the children? And everybody wants to argue about what abortion is, or religion says, you know, the Bible and God says you shouldn't have an abortion. Who's God? I mean, that's the one point. I mean, there are people who believe in abortion. They have a right to it. And as I personally know, a woman has a constitution right because she's supposed to be treated equal to the man, and the man is to be treated equal to the woman. In the Bible, the man enslaves the woman, and the woman is supposed to bow and do what the man tells her. There's no freedom with the religion. But the Constitution gives her the right to have freedom. And so when we do that, if the woman has equal rights, you have equal rights. If you want to dictate to a woman and says she doesn't have rights, so you're taking a religious point of view, not a common sense point of view, because you're taking a religious point of view. Common sense, you wouldn't do that. Common sense with most people would say, hey, it's her right, turn my back, and I don't have to deal with it. You know, and then I have my religious point of view, which you do have a right to, so deal with it. You know, it's like when we grew up in the 60s and 70s, and I remember dealing with so-called drug addicts and alcoholics. What did everybody do? They turned their back on them. They didn't deal with them. How come we're not doing that today? How come we're not raised with respect? How come we're not taught respect anymore? So, and, you know, it's really sad because we're losing respect for ourselves. So anyhow, we're going to open up the floor, and it's been frustrating for me for the last basic year because I've been constantly in and out of the hospital with lung and heart failure. But I do really grateful with the team where I'm at, with the hospital I've been dealing with. Very honorable, very nice people. They know their job. I'm still alive because of it, compared to in my county, because I'm not in my county, but my county is the education and training spot for the entire state of Oregon, because that's Lincoln County, is the training spot for medical providers in the state. So it is the highest, deal on the coast, and, most of the coast hospitals are the training spots for the big cities and stuff. So it is stepping out, realizing what, why, and how. So, but anyhow, and remember, if you're claiming the word citizen, know if you're using a capital C or lower C, knowing what it really means, knowing if you're lawful or legal. Those are the things that when you go to court, or if you end up in a Title III court, you have to prove your rights, just like you have to prove the judge took an oath to the Constitution, not to administrative court or legislative court. And that's what Article 1 tribal courts are. So it's just stepping out of the movie, watching the production, and paying attention to the actors and the structure of the promotion of the movie. So with that, let's open the floor and see if anybody's got anything to add.
All participants are unmuted.
Nobody's got nothing to add tonight?
Say, Ed?
Yeah, go ahead.
Could you say that, explain that again about the, when you're typing up your instrument, you said use lowercase for
right.
state?
All right, so when you're writing this stuff that says the Supreme Court, you write the capital S and then the lower alphabetical structure behind that. So you don't write Supreme Court in capitals like everybody does, because when you write the Supreme Court in capitals, you're stating that you're still going under tribunal courts. You're not going under Article 3 court, and you're not using the Constitution. You're using basically the Vatican structure of their court system. And then when you file on that too, you have to do the research to find out if the judge has a bond by the Constitution. He took an oath to the Constitution, not the corporation, and so he's bonded by the corporation under his corporation name, using his corporation name as a public servant. So you get all 4 of his certifications, so that way you know what the judge is, who he is, and what side he's standing on. And so when you write it, the capital letters and the lower letters, you're stating what court you are, but you have to file it in the Supreme Court. Technically the Supreme Court's in Washington, D.C. That's Roberts and them. So, and that's where you got to file it. And that's technically the Article 3 courts is run out of Washington, D.C. The states are still corporation courts. So, and I'm still doing the research on the courts, so, we'll get more information, but this is what we've got now. This is stuff that is on new.org and trackers. It's there for educational knowledge. And then I'll be putting up a deal here. It's called the Sovereign is Somebody Who's Not Subject to Statutes. And so sovereign technically comes down to a lawful bloodline native. And we want to stick with that one, lawful bloodline native, because it's not a title of nobility, but it's saying that you're a living man and woman. So we're putting, our circumstances in on the legal part, not the commercial end. So does that help you comprehend a little bit more on the capitalization on that to file in the court?
Yes, Ed. Thank you.
And then I'll send you too, because I did put together a structure with the tribunal courts and the Article 3 courts, how they work, how to put them together, and how to file in the courts. So I put that together, I think it was like 2 or 3 weeks ago. And so I don't know if we have that up on the website in the court structures, but we will get that up on the website so you can take a look at how it does that, and it has the other administrative rules that with that, so that way it walks you through that process. So anyhow, anybody else got any other questions, or you got something to add further? Okay, and don't forget the Article 1, Section 8, United States Constitution, dealing with your court system. And the Federal Reserve is a private corporation that is run by, 3 of the bankers, Rothschild, Fairchilds, and all of them. So it is putting these things together, comprehending what, why, and how. So if nobody's got any questions or anything further, we'll wrap it up, call it a short night tonight, and I'll get some of this stuff put up on the website, or on this talk show after we're done on the UCC codes and stuff, so that way when people come back, you'll have the information up here, so that way you could actually use it and you could run it and have the administrative rules and the laws and the statutes, so that way you've got the ammunition on how to write your court case or your traffic tickets and stuff. And remember, a traffic ticket is not a criminal activity. It's not. And I'm going to try to find a friend of ours writing up on traffic tickets and how that works, because this one lady did a wonderful job putting it together, and so we'll get that put up so people can look at that. And don't forget, if you don't own your child, that's how the state can come in with no warrant and take your kids. So if you don't file to own your bloodline, you don't own nothing. You know, it's like your car. You have to file to own it. Not a title of registration is a title of basically nobility. It's a permission for you to use that equipment that you bought, but you already turned it over to the state by registering it. So, you know, you have to ask permission. And we're all still fighting on some of that, but people are getting their rights to travel through. I'm putting that in my affidavit that I'm getting out too on the human trafficking. And so I'm finishing that up because, like I said, I'm setting everything up. So I can file my case in an Article 3 court. So I've got it almost set up to start going on it. So that's the whole point of what I'm doing. So, you know, I've been educating myself along this road, so, and putting it out. So if people have been following it, they, you know, this is how we're going to be able to protect the bloodline and protect ourselves in these tribunal courts or maritime courts, whatever you want to call them. And so, and then we got a conflict of interest with that structure, so we're working to get that in so we could have a eventual conversation on that one, so that way it brings it more out. And that's the whole point. So with that, if nobody's got anything else, we'll call it a night, and I won't argue about that because I've been still in and out of the hospital myself. And so with that, I say, the Great Spirit and Mother Earth bless you, and may the Creator look over all of us.
All right, thank you very much, Ed. It is currently Saturday, January 19th, 2019. It is 5:49 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and you've been listening to Disclaimers by Ed Johnston. Thank you very much for listening, and catch us tomorrow, if Ed feels up to it, for education.
Oh, yeah, no, I'll be there tomorrow.
Yeah, hopefully.
I'm not going anywhere. I don't care what anybody says. I ain't going to take me yet.
Yeah, all right. Well, in that case, we'll see you all tomorrow. And seriously, research everything said. I mean, even I'm looking at what Article 1 court is, and it's a tribunal. Tribe, meaning 3. Bunal, meaning I have no clue, but basically it means 3 people are supposed to be presiding over it. Even these Article 1 courts that you go to has 1 judge. And usually 2 lawyers, so I guess that could be 3, but there's supposed to be like 3 judges in a tribunal.
Well, technically, and that goes back to the old Christian Crusades.
Right.
That's where that actually was founded.
So, I mean, that's Article 1. That's for corporate...
Yeah, and that's where they go after judging people.
Branches. That's what it's about. So, that's Article 1. Article 3 is with the jury. So, yeah. Anyways, we'll just research, learn. They can take away your property. They can take away your funding. They can take away a lot of things from you, but they can't take away the knowledge you've gained. Unless they kill you, and then, well, you don't have to worry about it after that.
Yeah, but we don't want that to happen to anybody.
They're working on it.
Well, yeah, we know that.
So, all right, guys. Well, thank you very much, and have a good night.